Everyone in my family was a lawyer, and I also liked this job. Of course, it was quite hard to study. It was a long and exhausting job, but I liked it. Studying took almost all my free time, but I liked to study. Various intricate cases, masterful moves of famous lawyers. I found interesting points in the legislation. Study the application of these laws in practice. When I was young, I had little fun. I didn't like noisy parties with a bunch of drunk teenagers. I didn't see anything good in it. I liked to spend my free time in a quieter place. Sometimes I would gather with friends at my friend's dacha. I really liked it there. There was a beautiful area here. There was a flat green lawn everywhere. Trees grew around. There was a wonderful area for a fucking barbecue, where we basically rested, sitting around the fire. There was a girl in our company named Julia. She was incredibly beautiful. She had long, thick, night black hair, and her brown eyes were mesmerizing with great power. I really liked this girl right away. We were good friends with her, and there was mutual sympathy between us. But our relationship was not destined to develop further. I needed to move with my parents to another city, which was quite far away, and I had to say goodbye to all my friends and to Julia. At first, we still tried to communicate at a distance, but everyone had their own new worries and deeds, so communication ceased. My father filled me with various cases that I had to sort out in order to gain experience. I also spent time with a lot of books and various documents. To be honest, I was a little uncomfortable with the fact that I only do what I dig into it all, but I don't have a personal life at all. With the sad thought, I returned home from the office. It was already evening, but it was not too late. The sun still beautifully flooded the streets with evening gold, decorating the end of the day with some magic. I looked into the distance and heard a familiar voice in my friend. "Danny, is that you?" A pleasant female voice addressed me. "Julia, is that you?" I turned to the girl. "Yes, Danny, hi. You look just fine. It's not that you looked bad before. You were always beautiful, but now it's just wonderful. How long have we not seen each other? 4 to 5 years. Thank you, Danny. You look really good too. It's been 6 years since you left. Horror. Time flies. So what are you doing here?" "Yes, now I have a job here. My branch in that city closed, and I was transferred here." "How long have you been here?" "About 6 months." "I see. Why didn't you contact me? Would we meet?" "I don't even know. Danny, we haven't seen each other for a long time. We didn't communicate. And I had a lot of work. I had to learn a lot of new things here." "I see. I understand you, especially about work. So maybe we can take a walk now, unless, of course, you have other plans?" I asked hopefully. "Yes, Danny, we can take a walk. Today I'm free." "That is great. Okay, so now we're going to Taylor's home bake shop. Believe me, you have never tasted such yummy. I see that you still follow the figure, I understand. But you definitely can't refuse these calories." "Well, Danny, you've intrigued me. Let's go." And we went down the street, walked along the embankment, along which grew a very beautiful alley. Then we turned right and walked along Zeleniah Street. This is where the bakery was. "Gloria, hi. So we have 2 cakes with berry filling and cream." "Hello, Danny. Okay, 1 minute. So take it and try it. What do you say?" I handed the cake to Julia. "God, Danny, I'm so hungry, or is this the most delicious thing I've ever tasted in my life?" Julia replied, with admiration, biting off a piece of cake. "I told you." "Okay, now let's have a bite and go sit somewhere else. There is another wonderful place here that you will definitely like." We went to a restaurant located on the waterfront. There is always calm live music playing here, which was the best way to accompany our evening. We laughed and reminisced about the past. It was a very wonderful evening. After that evening, we agreed to meet again. Feelings flared up between us again. There was no way I was going to let Julie go. Our relationship was legalized by marriage a year later. I did not even have time to come to my senses, as 15 years had already passed in marriage with Julia. We lived in my house. I made pretty good money and Julia didn't have to work anymore. She happily took care of the house while I worked. I tried to pamper my beloved wife with gifts. I spared nothing for her to have the best, and in our relationship reigned idle. At least that's how it seemed to me. We spent our free time with Julia in different ways. We could just lie on the couch in front of the TV and watch movies, have picnics in nature, go to the friends we have here. The only thing I didn't really like was Julia's interaction with Kevin. He was a very arrogant guy whose smile did not leave his face for a moment. Kevin had his own store where he sold various household appliances. We met when Julia ordered a bunch of new equipment, which we didn't need at all. "Julia, why did you order so many vehicles? I got a huge bill," I said indignantly. "Honey, I visited a great store." "Yes, in general, the amount turned out to be decent, but in general it is much cheaper than it cost in other stores," Julia answered. "Yes, but are you sure that this is a high-quality equipment from the manufacturer and not a Chinese fake?" "Danny, the store owner assured me that these are genuine products from the manufacturers. He just has very good discounts. He showed me all the certificates of quality." "Something I don't believe in it. They hung noodles on your ears, and you were glad." "Honey, I wanted the best." "Then you should have at least consulted with me." "Honey, well, let's leave it. It lies in the garage, does not interfere with anyone. Believe me, these are great things. Please, let's leave it all." "Okay, but in the future consult with me, please. Give me the checks." "All right, darling, here are the checks. By the way, the owner's name is Kevin, and he lives not far from us. He knows that we live next door and invited us to visit. Honey, let's go. You will get to know him, and you will see that he is a wonderful person." Okay, let's go visit. See who this Kevin is." I met Kevin, but he didn't make a good impression on me. He showed more interest in my wife. I didn't like it much, but my wife reassured me that only I was important to her, and Kevin just had such a manner of communication due to his trading ambitions. But soon the situation changed for the worse. Several times I came home, but Julia was not at home. She would leave without warning and return home late. "Where the hell have you been, Julia?" I asked at 3 o'clock in the morning when the light came on. "In the hallway." "Bunny, I'm a little late." "I'm sorry, but we had such a great walk with our girlfriends that you can't even imagine," Julia answered, taking off her boots. "Delayed? A little? You didn't even tell me." "I'm worried. I'm waiting for you. And you don't even bother to pick up the phone when I call you. Or at least call me yourself and tell me where you are and when you will be home." "Yes, honey, I'm guilty. The phone was in the bag, but I didn't notice how quickly the time flew by." "Yes, and still a very long time waiting for a taxi." "You tell me such a story 10 times already. It doesn't make it any easier for me. What is going on? Why are you acting like this to me?" "Danny, please don't exaggerate. I did apologize. I still love you. You are my only and inimitable. I just want to unwind a little sometimes. That's all. Can you at least warn me about your adventures so that I don't worry?" "Of course, dear. I'm sorry. I'll tell you everything. Just don't yell at me." That was the last time I tried to listen to Julia's excuses, but her words had no effect on me. I stopped trusting her. But from scratch, I did not want to make a scandal. I needed to follow her, find out the whole truth about where Julia was and what she was doing without me. I had a pretty free week, and in my spare time, I started following Julia. I said that I was leaving for work, but I myself got into my car and drove not far so that my house could be seen. For the first couple of days, Julia did not go to her obscure parties, went shopping, and returned home. It was nice, of course. Maybe I'm wrong about her, so think. But on the third day, late in the evening, I noticed that a taxi had pulled up to her house. Julia hurried out of the house. She looked like a whore at a show. Bright lipstick, high heels, miniskirt. She'd never dressed like that before, and she must have been getting pretty wild. Because I got home pretty late this week. I followed the taxi. We stopped at a restaurant. Julia got out of the car and went inside. The restaurant had large panoramic windows, and it was pretty easy to see who was inside. I saw Julia sit down at the table near the window where that bastard Kevin was sitting. A wild rage boiled up in me. I wanted to run up and immediately hit this bastard in the face. But I restrained my emotions, continuing to watch how sweetly they smiled and laughed at each other. It seemed like an eternity had passed, but they sat in the restaurant for about an hour and a half. Then they left the restaurant and got into a taxi together. I followed them. They drove right up to Kevin's house, which was 4 houses from ours, very close. They went to Kevin's house. I saw a light go on the second floor. There were no curtains on the window, but there was no way for me to see what was happening there. And then I remembered that I had a small quadcopter with a camera in my garage. I quickly drove to my garage and returned with a quadcopter. I raised the quadcopter to the level of the window and saw this disgusting picture. Julia, with a naked ass, jumped on Kevin. Then he put her on all fours and began to have from behind. "Here you are, fucking bitches," I shouted. Incredible anger boiled inside me. I was ready to smash everything here to hell, but I tried to restrain myself. I realized that I would not forgive this disgusting betrayal. I felt that it was no longer my wife. It was a lustful whore who constantly lied to me. Apparently, this was not the first time. I felt sick from the fact that this creature then went to bed with me. I decided to take revenge on these 2 bastards so that they would pay a high price for what they did. I remembered that I had appliances at home that Julia bought from this bastard. I knew something was wrong with this product. I handed over the technique to the experts for analysis. It was a cheap fake that was sold under a well-known brand. Having learned this, I hired a couple of guys who were engaged in surveillance. They could easily enter any building. I paid them to get into Kevin's office. There must obviously be fake certificates and other documents that were clearly made with violations. Soon I had all the evidence that I could use to destroy Kevin. Julia's birthday was coming up soon. I have always spoiled her with impressive gifts. This time the gift will be no less impressive. It's Julia's birthday. Many guests gathered. There were relatives of Julia, friends. That bastard, Kevin, came too. I pulled on a huge white piece of fabric to point the projector at and show our family photos. And when all the guests gathered, I decided to make a toast. The celebration took place on the street. The area near my house was quite large. I went up to the small stage and took the microphone in my hands and called Julia to me. "Dear friends, thank you very much for coming to congratulate my beloved wife, Julia. You all brought her gifts, and I also have a gift for her. You all know Julia as a decent and sweet girl who is the guardian of our family hearth. She would never offend her husband and would not betray, and I would appreciate it immensely if it were true. But in fact, Julia is a hypocritical whore who is not worth a darn. Suck. Attention, free movies." I shouted, and pressing the button on the remote, turned on the video from the quadricopter where she was moaning and somersaulting with Kevin. "What it is?" Julia screamed. "Bastard, how did you manage to take it off?" Kevin screamed. Kevin jumped up from the table, which was directly under the stage. He tried to snatch the microphone from me, but I perfectly loaded him in the chest with a precise kick. "On, bitch, lie down a bit," I yelled as I kicked Kevin. Kevin collapsed right on the table, turning over all the snacks and drinks. "That's not all, you dirty bastard. I will destroy you. You will pay for everything, and there will be no mercy. And you, dirty whore, enjoy the holiday as a gift to you. I'm filing for divorce, and you will be left with a bare ass, like in this video. And now fireworks," I shouted. There was a pop of confetti, and an orchestra with trumpets and drums came out from behind the house, two people in front carrying a huge sign that said, "Julia is a whore, congratulations." I splashed an unfinished glass of champagne in Julia's face. Then he grabbed a large bucket of ice in which the drink was cooling, put it on the head of Kevin, who had just stood up in bewilderment, and kicked him again. Now you know more about Julia. And now everyone is gathered and gone home. The show is over. I kicked Julia out of the house that same evening, throwing all her belongings straight out into the street. I divorced her and, as promised, left her with a bare ass. I filed a lawsuit against Kevin and sued him. I received a substantial compensation for the fact that Kevin sold me a fake. He was sentenced to a decent term in prison for forgery fraud. I was satisfied with my revenge. It helped me cope with my resentment and the realization that I was living with a nobody. But now in my life there are only proven people in whom I know